Hello, and welcome to Be Indie Now, a podcast about independent game development. I'm your host, Tobiah Marks. With me today via Skype is Ash Monif.
Hey.
And Aaron Weingarten.
Hello.
Now, this is an extra special episode because these are two friends of mine. We also happen to all go to the same school, Cogswell College, and we were all presidents of the Game Development Club at one point throughout that game club's history.
I was number 12.
I was number 7, and I believe Ash actually started the club.
I was number 1. Yay!
Hey, number 1.
Still in indie gaming.
Yep.
Woohoo!
So today I want to talk about core games. Specifically, how do core games work in the modern ecosystem of casual and social games? Like, yeah, there's still core games coming out there, but a lot of them are AAA titles, have a lot of money, have a lot of push. You see a lot of indies going for the casual and social space. Maybe it's because they're easier to make, maybe because they're just make a ton of money right now. But the question is, why is that? And are core games still alive? Can you still make money with them? Are they still fun to new players out there? But before I talk about that, first off, let's talk about what is a core gamer and what is a core game, or the differences thereof. Ash, what are your thoughts? Like, how would you define what is a core game?
Sure. So, seeing the game. Well, first off, the industry and the game market has just changed dramatically over the years, right? Once upon a time, the only gamer was a core gamer, right? Because you just had to have a PC and you had to figure out what titles there were out there and all that jazz. Then then the consoles came in, like the NES, the Sega, and you still were pretty much a core gamer. Casual gaming really didn't come along until the internet and flash gaming. And so there's all these different kind of flavors. If you think of ice cream, of different type of gamers, but the three main flavors, you got casual gamers. Now, casual gamers, they game out of boredom or to kill time. They're waiting in line, there's a meeting that they're just not really into. They do it out of boredom, they get entertained, they might get into it and have a good time, but they don't usually stick around for a long time. So it's very brief interactions. Sometimes, though, they do get addicted, like Farmville, right? You come back again and again. Then there's midcore. Midcore is a little controversial. Different people have different ideas. My definition is a midcore gamer is actually a core gamer who plays for passion, who wants a deep, rich experience, but just doesn't have the time anymore. And they're afraid of getting sucked in. So they want these brief, bite-sized experiences. The other side is people saying, hey, these are casual gamers that are just really getting into gaming. They love it, and they want, again, a more rewarding experience, something that's not just so shallow. And then there's core gamers. Core gamers, these are people who get their entertainment, their escapism, their cathartic release from gaming, right? They seek it out. Instead of going to a sports event, they fire up a great RPG and they really dig into it, And, the big thing to notice is core gamers are a relatively small, well-spoken group. Mid-core, again, the mix, and the casual, it's almost everybody.
That sounds like a great definition to me. Aaron, what do you think the difference between the game design goes for those different groups? I mean, like, obviously, like, the games for a casual gamer and core gamer are different. That's kind of what we call core games. But how is it different? What makes that difference? Is it they're harder? Is it the more time investment?
Well, essentially, on the design side that I've actually seen with the games is usually when you're going for casual, you're going for something that's a little easier, something that overall could have an interesting or difficult part to it, but you kind of want to introduce that later on. So, for example, when I designed for a mobile game, I made a lot of easier levels early on that were kind of intuitive and very basic and easy, and then made sure that if they stuck around long enough and they liked it enough, that there were really difficult levels later on.
Well, isn't that work for all design sense, right? Even as a core gamer, you want your first levels to be easy, and you want to have that progression. It's more of a talking about degrees, right? Is it
well,
like Ash was saying? Am I wasting time right now, and I want to have that 5-minute commit, or am I going to commit to this game for 3 hours? I mean, is that really the core of what makes a hardcore game versus a casual game? Is just how much time I want to put in it? Can you have like a hardcore game that you play in 30 seconds, or a casual game that you play for 3 hours straight?
Well, usually I've noticed the people who do play the hardcore games are playing it for more than 30 seconds.
That's true. But I've seen a lot of people play casual games for hours on end. So what makes them not hardcore then? Is it, I guess, the ability that they don't have to play for 3 hours to enjoy the experience?
I'll say it's depth. I'd say it's depth of the design. So if you look at the form factor from a lot of like iPhone games, iPad games, there's no joysticks, there's no buttons, so your menu system has to be fairly light, contain pretty much a minimum HUD, minimum UI. And so I think that being the case, everything is right on the surface, immediately accessible. You can have games that are highly addictive, but still be casual. I think those are not mutually exclusive items. So like Angry Birds, very simple game. You're just dragging back the slingshot, right? But it's highly addictive, and so people play for hours. But it's still, I would call that a casual game, versus something like an RPG like Final Fantasy. You have this deep menu system, and you can navigate through it. You have to equip your different spells, equip items, kind of plan your tactics in advance. So I'd say it's a level of complexity is the real common denominator.
Well, what about a game like Super Meat Boy? I think that's absolutely a hardcore game. That game is brutally hard. It only goes for a certain set of people, but it's also really, really simple. There's not much UI elements. There's a very, very easy controls. It's just move and jump. So does that break your definition, or is the depth come in the level design there?
Actually, I would go, at least with his definition, I definitely would say it goes with the level design and the complexity, because the whole point of, like Ash was saying, it is kind of the surface. It does make a lot more sense that it's more surface versus what deeper complexities underneath it. And for something that may have a really simple and basic UI and gameplay, as Super Meat Boy makes up for its core part with ridiculously hard levels and gameplay, levels.
So if a core game has that depth, has that time investment to truly understand it and truly get into it, are core games by definition exclusive? Are they alienating to some players? Is that what makes them different, that they alienate a certain audience? And that's okay. Some people don't need to enjoy every kind of game.
Flip that, instead of alienate, I'd say appeal. So think of like manga or comic books, right? It's visual storytelling, 17 to 22 pages, boom, 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 boom. You get your fix, you're happy, you walk away. And then you go ahead and you pick up, J.R. Tolkien, and you read The Hobbit, right? It's a different appeal. You're there for like a couple days, just pouring over the details and the maps, and just going into such more detail. So I'd say, Super Meat Boy is a deep core game through its level design. It's just highly accessible. But I don't think it turns off casual gamers. It just doesn't appeal to them. So I guess I'm just saying the same thing, just in different words.
Yeah, I suppose whenever you talk about definitional category arguments, it all gets to semantics, right? I mean, It's kind of like that old adage, like the pornography laws, right? I know it when I see it. You kind of know a hardcore game when you see it versus a casual game. But so moving on to discussion, is it easier or harder to make a core game? Is it harder because you're going after a niche audience? There's only a certain amount of people who are going to like that kind of, or only so many people who like that RPG. Or is it easier when you're marketing a game that, I go after this kind of gamer? You're going after a broad spectrum. I go after everyone. It kind of becomes daunting to market, because how do you focus? Whereas certain people tend to gather around certain groups, have smaller channels, you can advertise easier. Ash, you've been running your own company trying to make a core game. So tell me about your experience with that.
So, we didn't. There's two kind of ways that people design games from a business perspective. Let me just talk about that for a second. Some people look at the market. They say, "Hey, a bunch of people, casual is really popular, right? Let's make a casual game." Or they say, "Hey, online freemium games are really, really hitting it big now. Let's do that." And so they're looking at the market. They're getting market data back, and they're analyzing and saying, "Okay, what do we want to do to ride that wave?" There's nothing wrong with that. Okay, that's just business. Okay, but in order to make a core game, it's kind of counterintuitive to that a little bit, because you're not following the trends, because you're not going after a big market segment. Business tells you sell a product and get as many people to buy it as possible. That's not about core gaming. Core gaming is about getting a small group of people really excited about this game, and so you put in a lot of polish and a lot of your heart and a lot of your love into it, and you're just presenting it to that smaller group of people. So it's a little counterintuitive than doing regular business.
Well, what about the games like Call of Duty, or the new Batman game coming out? Those are core games. They make huge money and huge business.
Huge budgets. So I mean, sometimes I mean, I would call that term gravity well. When you have a multi-million-dollar budget title, Call of Duty is ridiculous.
Mm-hmm.
There it's everywhere. I mean, and it just pulls everyone who even has ever heard of a game or even owns a PC will be like, I've heard of that. Let me check it out. And of course, they're playing with their buddies, and their buddies are playing it, and so it's this it's called a network effect. You're playing because your friends are playing, right? And so like everybody starts playing this game. And Call of Duty has this network effect, and so every year when it comes out, everybody's playing it. I mean, you can see the stats online. People take days off their jobs and log online to get all these hours. And so it's a remarkable phenomenon with these like mega hit games.
So how would an indie game compete with that? Do you need a big budget in order to make a game? I mean, I've no Super Meat Boy. There's a ton of other core games.
No,
I see a lot of indie core
Look
games.
at Super Meat Boy. They're a great example. To make a core indie game, you basically follow your heart and passion. You come up with an idea that really resonates with you, and you're making this game almost as if you're making it for yourself and your best friends. Like, hey guys, check this out, right? And so, yeah, you get some ideas from the market and what's going on there, but in a large way, you kind of ignore what's going on there, and you kind of trust your instincts as a developer, saying, this is fun for me, this is fun for my games, my friends and family. I'm going to share with the rest of the world and see what they think of it. Right, and I think that's exactly how Super Meat Boy happened. I mean, I haven't done the research or talked to the guys, but from what I understand is they made a little Flash version of it, threw it on the web just to share it with the world, and people got really excited about it, and that's where it took off. And I think it's the same idea for indie core dev. You're going to come up with an idea that you think is really cool, that you're really passionate about, polish it as best as you can, and then just get it out there.
I mean, that's good advice for all kinds of games, core or otherwise. But I guess for a core game, it's extra important since you kind of have that smaller audience. You have to build up negatively. You have to have that community build up around your game.
Yeah. You're making it for the community. I mean, we were inspired by, roguelikes that we played growing up, and we said, hey, let's make a modern roguelike that's really crazy and twisted. So that's how we came up with Dragon Soup.
I mean, that brings up a good point. I mean, people talk about roguelikes all the time, and Spelunky is another modern example of a roguelike kind of getting back in popularity. But, we call it Rogue since Rogue was a really, really old game. When was that released? Like 89, early 90s? It was something very early like that. And people are still copying that core mechanism. I suppose in the same way that people copy Doom whenever they make a first-person shooter. But again, first-person shooters could also be kind of considered a core since they go back to that early days of designs. Aaron, how do you think core games have changed or evolved over the years? Have they not evolved by definition? Are they always going back to that older childhood design, maybe iterated on, but there's still a bit of semblance there? Or can there be a new hardcore game design?
Well, from at least what I've noticed over the years for core games usually go off of one major huge new mechanic that's new and exciting and base that off of something that already existed that already worked really well. So just overall, I've noticed, like you said, a lot of first-person shooters do base a lot of their stuff off of earlier games such as Doom, but I mean, Gears of War had a whole new thing where you had the gun that also had the chainsaw attached to it, and you could just kill the hell out of things with that. Call of Duty mainly tried to do things where essentially they tried to network all your friends together so you can play and have a great big networking experience where you can play friends all around the world. But they still based it off of that basic shooting mechanic.
That itself has evolved from Doom and Quake, that early id pioneering of multiplayer gaming. I mean, Call of Duty, the early Call of Duties before it became as big as it is now, was also known for bringing in cinematics and story into first-person gameplay. So, they evolve that core, right? There's new elements, but it's not fundamentally different. I mean, I think of an example myself to honor my own point. Catherine. Catherine is a really, really hardcore game. It is not easy. It's not intuitive. It has a lot of depth. In some ways it can be described as simple because it's not complicated, but it is still really, really hard to get into, and it only appeals to a certain audience. And it's not similar to many other games I've seen. So is that just a weird example that we find every now and then, or is something about the nature of core games that they are more iterative than inventive? Or I don't know. Is casual more inventive, or just seemed that way? It might not be a fair question.
Well, I just think overall casual, the only reason why over the years it does seem more inventive is because they have more of an area to play around with and less risk, at least for that. I've noticed with a lot of casual games, it's about getting the game out there that could hook people, that maybe don't have that much time to play at all. But the core games usually have to depend on, they have to get something out there and they have to make a profit, otherwise they're screwed.
They have to like it, so there's more incentive to go on what's been done before.
Exactly, because they know it works and they know it's great. That's usually why I said that what I've noticed over the years is that they have that same good core, but they usually add things on top of it that can make it better, or maybe they change one core thing to see if it will work better for the future.
So now that you've been designing an indie core game, or doing the level design for one, how do you think about that in difference in a social game? Now you know, okay, I have to go off this established, but we're indie now. The technology exists that my risk is maybe a bit smaller than it was 5 years ago. Do you have room to play around in, or do you want to go to safe route and go for, no, we got to go for this, what's been done before, what works?
Well, honestly, right now I'm kind of doing a lot of prefab generation for randomized level-based things. So for the most part, I've been just kind of playing around with making randomized tablets that I'm not sure may or may not work. So when I tried throwing them all together, it kind of was a trial and error process. I mean, I did look up different dungeons and different things that I know have been successful in the past. But honestly, when you're trying to base it off of the other games, at least for the level design I've noticed, especially for this kind of core game, it just didn't work out as well. So, I mean, I guess it's because it's indie and I kind of got a whole bunch of freedom to just do whatever I wanted to do for the prefabs. Or for the level creation, I've just essentially been playing around, seeing what feels right and what may feel organic to what already exists in the game. So if it's an area that, say, I'm working in a dark forest, the dark forest has these dead trees and gravestones and stuff, and so I kind of want to give it an eerie feeling. So for some of the prefabs, I just kind of created these kind of grave areas that just seem kind of dead and freaky because it's supposed to be a dark, dead forest, as opposed to looking up past things that may or may not have worked. I just decided to go with, well, what does this look like? Well, the camera goes up here, or the walls tend to go a little bit high, so I probably shouldn't have anything down at the bottom. I should have most of this visual stuff near the top and just kind of build it off of there, see what looks nice, play test it.
It makes a lot of sense. I mean, you don't have the AAA budget where you have level designers going through that game, bit by bit to make sure everything works. No. You're just a couple designers are going through and making pieces to make hours and hours of content generated, which is a really smart way to do it. And I've seen a lot of games doing that kind of procedural generation. Ash, do you think you have to do that in a core game now? Is that, and obviously it's easier in some ways than doing that prefab, but is that a strength of, as an indie, going that procedurally generated or route over, say, pre-designing out an entire world?
Yeah. So what it comes down to is, let me take one step backwards. I actually really agreed with your point that you established that big AAA budget games are more iterative, whereas more indie games are willing to take the risk and become much more innovative, right? Do something different, really mash things up. And there's actually a formula for this. It's called the 80-20 formula, and it's 80% evolution. So you take an idea, a genre, a gameplay mechanic that's already been done, you just improve it, right? That's 80% of what you're trying to do. And then 20%, you just tweak it out. You just add just a little something different, right? And you can see a lot of the big AAA games do exactly that. They don't take a big risk with change. It's 10, 20% max, right? Now, going to this question, though, what you're talking about is, procedural generated content. It absolutely does come down to budget. So if you're bootstrapping and you're 100% indie and you're throwing your money into this, and your parents and your friends and your family all are helping you out here, you want to get the most bang for your buck. It really depends on the type of game. So procedurally generated content doesn't work for everybody, but for some genres, it works really, really well. So if you look at the game that came out, FTL, FTL, excellent roguelike space, kind of tactics game, and that benefited very highly from procedural generated content because they have all these ships, all these different scenarios, all these different races, and they say, okay, let's procedurally combine these. So every time you play the game, it's unique, it's different, right? With achievements that are persistent throughout. And so that was a very clever and innovative way of using procedural generated content. So, at Grimm, we're trying to do the exact same thing because we're on a very small budget, and we think we can maximize it. But it doesn't necessarily have to be that, right? Level design, if done well, can be very quick, and it can be a linear, very, very good experience.
No, it makes sense. It depends on what works. I know lots of core games that didn't have procedural content, but can still be made by indies. Again, Super Meat Boy, not really procedurally generated. Those levels are designed, but still worked out. It's also a matter of time, though, and how much, because they did. I don't know how many years they took to develop it, but they spent a good amount of months. Whereas a lot of indie games I talk to in the casual space, they're working on 3-month dev cycles. Every 3 months, major content update, or 3 months the game grows out, 3 months another content update. Is it possible to have that kind of speed when doing a core game? It requires so much play testing, so much love to be put in it, so much balancing. Can you have those quick iteration cycles and still be useful for a player?
I'm going to say no, and this is why. Because at least from my perspective, a core gamer is looking for a deep, engaging experience. Like it's like you sit down to a movie theater, and for the next 2.5 hours, you want to be completely immersed and entertained, right? I don't understand how, unless you're doing like text-based or something really, really clever, it's going to be really difficult to come up with a deep, compelling game experience in just 3 months. You can come up with a fun, addictive experience, something that's casual or maybe borderline mid-core, but honestly, I don't see how you can make a deep core experience. And what I mean by core is like shooter, racer, or RPG. Those are the 3 granddaddy genres of core.
And I mean, to be fair too, it depends on the design, right? A game like Serious Sam might have an easier time coming up with a 3-month dev cycle because they can just throw a bunch of new enemies in there and not have to change too much of the fundamental formula. Whereas an RPG might actually have to invest time in programming new game elements, balancing out new spells, stuff like that. So talking about game mechanics and design too, the design of a core game, a lot of them I see are more controller pad based. Maybe they use a keyboard on the PC, use one of the many controllers out there for the consoles. But a lot of core games I see on touch devices have that fake controller-like interface where they have those buttons on the screen, and those always irk me too much because it's like 33% of your screen is taken up by your own hands. I mean, do core games not work well on touch, or is that just a matter of the designers don't know how to design core games on touch yet since it's brand new? What do you think, Aaron?
Honestly, I think it's just a matter of trying out what it works based for your genre or what you're going for exactly. So, for example, for the game I'm working on right now, Dragonfin Soup, game's really fun, and it's kind of has this isometric top-down view going on, which works great, and it would work great for touch because essentially what we set up with the system itself for the look is you can essentially, if you're playing it on a tablet or something like that, you can just tap on the screen where you want to move, and if you wanted to get to the menu system, there's just a little notch on the side that you can just tap that, and there's a whole menu system that's just a really basic touch this, and you can go to anything you want to go to, just pretty much 2 touches, and you're in whatever menu you want to be in. And if you want to move to anywhere, it literally is just touch in that area, and since it's kind of a grid-based look, it works really nicely, and it moves very smoothly. So I feel like that could also work for something like if they decided for some reason to put Legend of Zelda on a tablet. If they did something where it's just basic touch-based systems, I think it could work really nicely. So instead of you have
your thumb on the screen and you move your thumb up to make Zelda move up, you just tap to move it.
I don't think you would need that exactly. I mean, it's something that probably if you wanted more of an instant kind of feel to it where you know that your actions instantly have a reaction, it makes more sense to have that for core gameplay, but there are a lot of games that if they could just use a lot of the stuff that most of those devices give you, such as the accelerometer or the parallax scrolling and stuff like that, touch-based stuff, you can do a lot with touch. And it's just, at least I've noticed with any kind of core game that really concentrates on having it for those devices has it. Any game that didn't really concentrate on having it on a device to begin with like that usually has the gamepads.
Yeah, they didn't put enough development time into making the mechanics work.
It was not their main focus to have it on that kind of device.
Yeah, it's interesting. One of my favorite core games for a touch device is Red Alert, which is a very old game that was re-released on iPad like a couple years ago, and they did a really good job making it so when I touched, it moved. You know, like can select multiple units using multi-touch, touch and move the guys. It worked without, just because a mouse-based game on the computer works great as a touch-based interface on the pad. But I don't see too many RTSs come out for touch devices. And I don't think that even that Red Alert copy necessarily sold that well. Probably sold because it was Red Alert and it was this old established Command & Conquer IP. But I don't see new real-time strategies coming out there anymore. Is it because that genre is dead, or is there an audience problem? Does the audience out there not want to play that kind of game anymore? Are they too afraid to invest money in it because it's so much easier to invest in another Candy Crush out there? How would you respond to that, Ash, if I was trying to pitch a game to you where it's a real-time strategy today? Is it not a good idea?
It really depends on the platform. So I was a former CEO of Subatomic Studios, and their claim to fame was the Field Runners franchise. So I helped produce that and get it out the door and produce all the ports for it and the expansion packs. And those guys, you know, they deserve a lot of credit. You know, they worked really hard on it, and you know, I'm proud to be a part of that. But what they basically did was they identified that tablets were really great for the TD genre, and they put it out there. And you know, there's all these TD games now on tablet devices.
By TD, you mean tower defense?
Tower defense. That's right. That's right. Which is a subgenre of RTS.
Mm-hmm.
So I would say that RTS is alive and well, but it lives on PC. It lives on PC more than console, and it lives more on PC than it does on tablet, because of the form factor. You know, you have the mouse, you have the menus, and if you're going to play like StarCraft, right? StarCraft is one of the premier RTSs. You know, you're going to have all those keyboard hotkey controls to have a really fast, quick match. So I would say on the tablet, RTSs did not catch on, but they're definitely alive and well, and we'll probably be seeing some more great RTSs coming out in the near future.
That makes sense, especially now that there's more and more app stores available for desktops as well. You know, mobile space, one of the reasons why it blew up for the indie scene was that you're able to just upload an app and sell it through a store. You don't have to go to have a personal website, don't have to do credit card processing. And now with the Windows 8 store and Steam, it's become easier for indies to be able to sell their products directly to consumers on PC platforms, and Mac and Linux now too. But so if I'm trying to target my platform, should I go for, you know, depending on the game, of course, but general, what's selling more? Is it Windows? Is it Mac? Is it tablets? You know, iPhone, I hear a lot of talking about that. A lot of people say there's Android, there's Windows Phone, and mobile cross-platform in general. Where should I target? Does it matter? What do you think, Ash?
Well, for us, we're making games for PCs and tablets for core gamers. And that's part of our mission goal, and to make all our games are going to have fairy tale kind of themes, inspiration in them, all of them. So, you know, we're going to be right now we're focused on RPGs, and we think that's the space where our audience is. We think that's a space where, you know, core gamers like us want to play and we can engage them. But as soon as you go to iPhone, I think you're looking at a much more casual audience. At the end of the day, the casual audience is going to, you know, be much bigger than core. Everybody's going to have a smartphone on them one day, and they're going to get a lot of their content through that, including gaming.
What about the tablet audience? There's a lot more gamers doing that now.
Yeah, you're catching on. So if we say iPhone is more for casual, you know, my partner Randis and I, we feel that tablet is a great place for where a lot of casual and core gamers meet. That's the mid-core. That's the mid-core platform. And so that's why we're going PC and tablet, and potentially console one day as well. But you know, that we think that there's going to be core gamers on there that we can reach out to and engage and share good yummy loving.
Mm-hmm. So, Aaron, when you're designing a game, do you have that in mind, that somebody might be playing this on a PC with a mouse and keyboard, or somebody might be playing it with touch? Does that go into your thought process, or is the game design itself kind of ambiguous towards how it works, how the touch input or the user input, I mean, will be interpreted?
Well, I know for designing games myself that, yeah, that's actually a major part of what I'm trying to figure out what it works. Because if it doesn't work intuitively for me, how would it work intuitively for a gamer, any kind of gamer who's working for that specific device? So usually with all those things, I make sure that the game works perfectly with them by just rigorously playtesting or trying out those features themselves just to see how they work.
What about in the individual level design? Are there certain elements that, say, would be really easy for a player on a PC but become really hard on a touch device, or vice versa? Do you ever run into issues like that?
Not really. Most of the games that I've developed for, or games that I've worked on personally or for any kind of company or anything, is usually those games have a specific place that they're going for. So I usually don't set up those games so they can work on multiple platforms. I'm usually targeting a specific platform. Like, for example, one of the games that I made is called Monocle Man. It works really, really well on a PC or console-based system. Unfortunately, it has absolutely no way in the possible future of working on any kind of tablet or phone device, anything that's purely touch-based, because it doesn't work. The camera motion that we wanted to do it, since it was a 3D puzzle game where you're climbing up to the top, just the camera alone was nearly impossible for us to figure out on our own.
Do you regret that the game was designed like that? Would you have done it differently?
No, we specifically targeted the game to be released on a console system, which was the Ouya, and we got our goal of what we wanted to do. Honestly, the game was just something that I wanted to get, that me and everyone who worked on it, we just wanted to get something done and get something out there. So I guess it depends on what you want your game to go for. If the game was meant to be that kind of game, that would be the start of a company that could branch out and do other stuff, I would have regretted it. But specifically because the game originally was only supposed to be for console, it works out perfectly fine.
Fair enough. I mean, speaking of starting a business, let's talk about the monetization of core games. How does the monetization of core games differ from a casual game? Free to play is incredibly popular right now, but of course isn't the only way to go. But I see most core games go for a premium model. You pay a certain amount of money and then you get in and you can enjoy it. But there's also hardcore freemium games, mostly in the MMO space, right? I think of Rift and other games that are now free to play. Ash, what is Dragonfin Soup going to be, free or paid?
Initially, and as far as we know, it's going to be a paid title. We're designing it so that the mechanics. Well, let me take one step backwards. A lot of core games have these mechanics in them that turn off core gamers, right? These kind of pay to win mechanics, or just speed up mechanics, timer speed ups, and that just pisses the shit out of core gamers. I'm sorry, they think it's a hack. They see right through it, right? A lot of casual gamers don't, but a lot of core gamers like this is garbage. This is rubbish.
You have extra scrutiny when you're a core game.
Yeah, just give me my $20. Here's my $20. Give me my cool experience and let me have my time, my fun with that experience. And so our game is going to be a premium product with DLC. Is there potential one day down the road when we have enough content to make a different version of the game that's premium, that is cool and doesn't seem to rip off the player? Yeah, sure. But I think we want to stay to even our own personal consumer habits, which is premium product with expansions or DLC.
So what would you recommend to other designers out there? Your game, that makes sense, going for the premium first, possibly in the future. Would you tell other designers doing core games you should go premium first? Or can you start off with that freemium model when you're building from scratch? Or is that just not recommended?
Well, here's my only recommendation. You can always drop the price. So if you come in and your game is at a premium value, and over time you drop it, and then you release a freemium version, that's somewhat palatable. But going from freemium to paid feels different, right? Mm-hmm. You kind of get that sense? I don't think I've ever seen a freemium game suddenly become a paid product. And so it's just, I actually encourage everyone to try everything. I mean, that's the beauty of the game industry, where it's a interactive art form, so try it all. But you don't really ever see that free to paid. You always see, either freemium out the gate, and that's what it is forever, or you see a price drop down.
Makes sense. All right, excellent discussion, guys. I want to just talk about what games have been playing lately. Aaron, what kind of games have you been up to in the last few weeks?
It has essentially been going back and forth. I just recently got Arkham Origins, which is freaking awesome.
Yeah, I really like the first two. I can't wait to try the third.
The overall, unfortunately, I would say it is kind of the weakest out of all three of the games, but still, it's freaking awesome.
Yeah, good.
It's really great. That, and I've been playing probably way too much Binding of Isaac. That game, I have no idea. Well, I do know why. It's very, 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 very addictively fun kind of game, and I was told recently, or I was told a little while back to try to play it for examples for working on Dragonfin Soup, just to get an idea of
getting good inspiration.
Yeah, just a little fun little inspiration thing. Wasn't the main one that I was supposed to play, but I may have started playing it a lot more again because of that.
That's why I asked this question at the end of every show. It's because playing games is a really good way to get inspiration. And you can't get so involved in making games that you forget to play them every now and then. You'll end up being a better designer for it.
That, and I have been playing the hell out of the game I am making, working on Dragonfin Soup.
Of course. What about you, Ash? What have you been playing besides Dragonfin Soup?
A lot of RPGs as well. I've been playing a little bit of Dungeons of Dreadmore, which is a really nice little roguelike game. I've been playing, also for different types of inspiration, Final Fantasy Tactics and Tactics Advance, both of those. And those are just superb little games. And then just for fun and just for pure inspiration, just some of the latest Zelda titles, Twilight Princess.
I
a little bit of a backlog there.
I didn't play the Final Fantasies myself, but man, I put so many hours in Twilight Princess. Didn't in Skyward Sword, but I put like 100 hours plus in the Twilight Princess. I don't know why I like that game so much.
On Skyward Sword, I heard about the bug, and I'll just wait till they re-release it.
Yeah, I mean,
I'm pretty sure they already fixed the bug though.
You have to download the patch.
Yeah, I'm sure they patched it by now.
Well, now when you get the game, it automatically does the patch.
Yeah.
From what I heard, and if you don't have an internet connection, it tells you specifically, by the way, there is a game-ending problem, so be aware of that.
If it had internet in the first place to even be aware of that message.
Yeah. It's true.
I've been playing Last of Us, actually, which is I've been having it's fun, it's good. At some parts of it I wasn't I haven't gotten to the end yet, and I know people have been talking about the way it ends in the story arc, so I don't want to speak too much, both for spoiler reasons and also great. Just I haven't had the full experience yet. But I've been putting some hours into that in between, of course, Pokemon. The new Pokemon came out, so on my commute to the train, I've been playing Pokemon, at least 30 minutes a day to try and catch some more, because I'm addicted like that. Excellent. So this Be Indie Now, you can find more episodes at beindienow.com, our website. You can also follow us on Twitter at beindienow. If you want to find more about me, you can learn at tobiahmarks.com. That's just my name.com. I have a blog there. I have a bunch of resources for game developers. Or you can follow me on Twitter at Tobiah Marks. Ash, where can we find you?
Sure. You can find out all about our game, Dragonfin Soup, at dragonfinsoup.com. We have a Facebook site, so you go to Facebook, The Grim Bros, which is us. Hello. And we have a Twitter going, and it's Grim_Bros. So please, guys, our game is going to be doing a closed beta in the near future. So if you want to participate, just sign up on our website, and we'd love to hear from you.
Excellent. What about you, Aaron?
If you want to find out anything about me, just look up Aaron Weingarten, game designer. That's all I have.
Just do a Bing search and you'll find it.
That's honestly all I have. Otherwise, if you just want to find a funny picture of me, look up Deadpool Waldo. I'm the only one who legitimately is a Waldo dressed up as Deadpool, or Deadpool dressed up as Waldo, however you prefer to say.
Yes. Cosplay conventions.
At fun random cosplay conventions. But other than that, you guys should really listen to Ash about looking up that beta for Dragonfin Soup. I hear it's going to be great.
Excellent. I definitely will be.
Fantastic.
All right. Well, thank you, everybody, for joining us for another episode of Be Indie Now. Go out there and make some games.
Thanks for having us.